Against that backdrop, time to bring in one of my former colleagues, Republican Tennessee Congressman Marsha Blackburn. Marsha, thanks for joining us on America's Forum.
I am always happy to join you, J.D., and appreciate the good work that you continue to do on this issue. You know, you and I have been working on this for a long, long time.
I well remember a meeting in the leadership offices with then Vice President Dick Cheney. We were sitting side by side telling the Bush administration, no, don't go for this, quote, comprehensive immigration reform. They tried it. They didn't get it then, but now Mr. Obama's trying to move forward unilaterally. You wrote an op-ed for the Tennessean. The headline, if I recall, is "Nothing Lawful or Fair About Obama's Executive Amnesty." In the here and now, recap for us some of the highlights from your op-ed.
Well, one of the things we have to look at when you talk about fairness and say, is this fair to everybody involved in the process? The answer comes back, no, it is not. Number one, people who are legally immigrating to the country. And I'll give you an example. We've got a lot of Kurdish that are in our area. Indeed, Nashville has the largest settlement of Kurds outside of Kurdistan. And I was contacted by someone who's been trying to get their family here. They're getting their permanent residence cards. They are tired of waiting on immigration services to do their job. And her comment to me was, Ms. Blackburn, are they going to, some of these 1,000 people they're hiring, are they going to process us first? And the answer to her is no. And that made no sense to her. They left unlawful rule in Iraq and came here because of their desire to live in a lawful, free society, and to honor people that have broken the rule of law makes no sense at all, and it's just blatantly unfair. Another thing, we've got millions of Americans who are out of work. You're going to see the president giving work permits to these 5 million or 20 million, as Sheriff Babu seems to think the number will more closely be. And then our individuals are going to be at the back of the line. An example of this, J.D., is a constituent of mine who has a masonry company, and it is a 4-generation business in this family. And he said he can hardly get enough work now for his son to stay employed because you have those that have illegally come in the country who go in, underbid, undercut, do the work, and move on. They leave town. And he said it is blatantly unfair to them. So these are the type things that we are seeing when it comes to the fairness argument.
Marsha, another thing you wrote in that op-ed for the Tennessean is the point about border security. When we can't secure our borders, you write, something interesting happens in our country. Every state becomes a border state, and every town becomes a border town. The dissolution of our sovereignty, our national security. Why does the president and why do so many people of both parties seem to just give lip service to, we got to have enforcement, but they always move for amnesty?
Well, you're exactly right on that. And that is the comment when we had the sheriff, Senator Sessions and Senator Vitter and I did our press conference, and we had all the local law enforcement and the sheriffs there with us in D.C. last week. That's the comment I made. Those sheriffs were there. They came to D.C. to plead their case to end this DACA program and to secure our border because the lack of federal enforcement has turned every state into a border state and every city and county into a border town. And the sheriffs are seeing that, whether they're from Pennsylvania or Kentucky or Arizona or Texas, standing there and talking with those sheriffs, they've got the exact same problem. And see, the president does not want to deal with the criminal illegal alien.
And we understand that, Marsha. This is such a big topic. Stay with us. We'll come back after the break. More with Marsha Blackburn. Let's continue our conversation with Congressman Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee, who joins us via telephone from the volunteer state. Marsha, the politics of amnesty. Bipartisanship, we battled the George W. Bush administration about, quote, comprehensive immigration reform. You hear Jeb, I guess at least he's He's saying what he feels. Your thoughts on the prospects for success in backing amnesty, or whatever you want to call it, and what does that do in terms of conflict within the Republican Party heading into 2016?
Well, first of all, to Governor Bush's comment about being an act of love, well, all you have to do is go read the Houston Chronicle May 24th article, which is titled Crossing Alone, Children Fleeing to U.S. in Shadowy System. You go read that article and you look at the amount of abuse that is taking place in this Office of Refugee Resettlement, the ORR, and you see that it is not an act of love. And I have written Sylvia Burwell not once but twice about this issue and am launching an investigation into the ORR. I think they know that they are under pressure because the director of that office recently resigned. But, J.D., no shelter worker has been prosecuted for sexual abuse of these children, and there is some. It is documented. We know these children have been molested as they've slept. They've been sexually harassed or seduced by staff members. And this is on top of what they have endured when they have been trying to cross illegally into the United States. They report that by the traffickers who are bringing them, they have been sexually abused. You've got 40% of these kids that are self-reporting abuse. So first and foremost of all, no, sir, it is not an act of love. And I think it is of concern to me and so many others that there could be and appears to be, and there is a need to investigate the ORR because of what is transpiring in these facilities, and we're going to stay on that.
And again,
position.
Marsha, I have a copy of one of the letters you wrote to the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Again, just to explain to everyone, ORR stands for Office of Refugee Resettlement. In the 2.5 minutes that remain, the political picture, the public policy picture is far from settled. Perhaps a ray of sunlight coming from the third branch of government in a federal court in Pittsburgh the other day. We had Judge Schwab basically saying that elements of Mr. Obama's executive amnesty are unconstitutional. In the 2 minutes that remain, Marsha Blackburn, do you believe the courts will step up to kill the Obama amnesty?
I do, and here's the reason. The judge made a couple of important points. Number one, inaction by Congress does not make unconstitutional executive action constitutional. And second, the point was the executive action goes beyond the prosecutorial discretion provision, and it is legislation. What the president is doing is legislation. It is not discretion. And the court is bound to ensure that the Constitution structural safeguards are preserved. This executive order goes beyond that, and the role cannot be shared with other branches of government any more than the president can share his veto power or Congress can share its power to override the vetoes. And the judge brought that decision forward based on those components. And the judge also made the point that executive amnesty would allow those illegal entrants into the country to gain substantive rights. So this is outside of the separation of powers and the Take Care Clause, and it becomes not discretion but legislation, and he is seeking to override the other branches of government, and he cannot do that. He cannot share those powers.
And we will have to leave it right there. Marsha Blackburn, thank you so much for joining us via telephone from Tennessee.
And Merry Christmas to you, JD.
Merry Christmas to you too, Marsha. Thanks so much. Coming up, believe it or not, some pundits compared President Obama's announcement on Cuba to Ronald Reagan saying, "Tear down this wall." We'll talk about that with Craig Shirley, the Reagan biographer, when we come back.